Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wowhead Weekly number 284. For a second there, I forgot what number it was. But yes, 284. Today, we got some little speculations to talk about since there's been a lot of hints towards 9.2 potentially being real close, maybe just around the corner. So we'll be talking about that and discuss what our thoughts around that is, especially with 915 just dropping and everything else that's been going on this summer. Apart from that, we're also going to be highlighting a new Murloc pet, a blue one, which is coming into the game and obtainable in game as well. And then we also got the very, very recent update on the Activision improvements for temporary employees, which is really, really interesting to see as well. Before we jump into anything, though, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Annie, also known as Annie Fuchsia, and I'm a full time streamer on Twitch. My co host is the very lovely Wowhead site director, Peculia.
Sometimes I'm joined by Brightpaw, but he's not here. Here's my cat. He was here for the intro. And yeah, it's fun to do this show. I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, overseeing the news and guides production, so it's nice to talk to people once a week and explain what's going on with the site. So yeah, we have some follow-up topics. Last show was kind of spontaneous because the earnings call had the really big news in the middle of our show.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this show will be a little more laid back, and we'll also just go through the earnings call again now that we've had a week to, think
Process it.
about, react to the changes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I think we should start off by discussing the 9.2 hints and kind of discussing, 915 launched, how did that go, and then we can move more into the Blizzard industry stuff.
I think that sounds like a good idea. Also, for whatever reason, whenever we swap the camera to you and you say hello, it's muted for like 2 seconds or something. I don't know
Oh,
why that is, but it's as if the camera, it's as if we're monitored by AI and they're trying to switch it on when it's time for you to speak and it's delayed or something. I don't
how
know
weird.
because Perk is not muted during that time. I'm not manually
Yeah.
like unmuting her, but for
You know
whatever
what's
reason, when she
interesting?
says hi, you just can't hear her. It's
So
almost every show.
when you did the Wowhead Weekly intro, like the first two words were cut off for me. I
Really
didn't hear them. Yeah. So
interesting. I
yeah,
wonder
like the
if
first
me
one I heard was
swapping.
like and I'm like, wait, like where did her
Oh,
sentence go? Yeah.
interesting. Maybe when I'm
Yeah.
swapping scenes in OBS, it's like lagging my Discord.
Yeah. I definitely wondered that
Interesting.
this time. So
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
yeah.
well, I hear it too, and apparently people do as well. But
Okay.
anyways, it's not me forgetting to unmute her. It's just that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's Discord. I
Yeah.
promise. Perk is never muted. But yes, so where do we want to start? Do we want to start with some 9.2 discussion?
Yep, I think so. Oh, Brightpaw, he's like biting my foot, Brightpaw.
It's like, Mom, they didn't talk about druids, okay?
Right.
I'm
There
not
actually is
interested.
druid stuff in 915 though. But yeah, let's talk
Oh,
about
that's
9
true.
2.
Mhm.
Because then I think that leads into like, well, 9.2 would be good if it, built upon the lessons of 915. But yeah, so 9.2, we have that special vendor CDN, which is like sort of this kind of it's not the PTR, but it's where builds would go if say there was like a special event. And normally a build goes on to this vendor area um, a few weeks before it makes its way to the PTR. So whenever we've posted about this uh, in the past, it happens soon after. So for example, patch 905 was March 9th. The 9.1 encrypted vendor build was April 8th, and then the actual data mining was April 13th. So
Mm-hmm.
by that time frame, it's a little different this time because we don't have that big gap between the point 0.5 patch and the encrypted build. Like this was both the same week. So it could be a more accelerated process now. Instead of having like a month in between, we had like 2 days. So yeah, if it follows the
Mm-hmm.
old patch schedule, we could have 9.2 this week. Or maybe Blizzard between like Endwalker delayed other releases. Maybe they want the 9-2 info dump to happen at a strategic time, like maybe Thanksgiving week, because that's a
Oh,
big, like, everyone's at home trying to, like,
yeah.
relax, not deal with stressful families. So maybe they want to drop that Thanksgiving week to, like, give people something to look forward to on their stressful week off, in the US.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean the wheels are definitely turning on this. And then in the Ian interview we covered last week, Ian did say 9-2 is coming. You'll be hearing more about that soon. We do have more planned after that, but it's hard to say too much more without almost spoiling some of the story that's going to come. We'll have a lot more details on that soon. But we want to be able to explain it in the full context of what 9-2 is going to be. So
Mm-hmm.
if I had a guess, there would be like a like 9-2 like Ian video, like information dump, and then maybe like a few days after that there would be data mining. Um because they also seem more particular now about having a strong first impression how they want to present something, as opposed to like, oh, what's this strange new spell? What could it be? Nobody knows. And they usually do
Yeah.
lead off with videos
Mm-hmm.
before the full data mining starts. So,
Mm.
but
Yeah,
yeah, I
that's really
think that's going to be the
interesting.
progression of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So 9.2
eh,
PTR is very, very, very close then potentially. So
yeah.
to just repeat what you said, the patch
Mhm.
9.1, the encrypted vendor build went live on April 8th, and then the PTR itself went live on April 13th. That's 5 days. Um,
Right.
so that was really soon after. And this build was, when was it found? Was it yesterday,
Um,
day before?
it, it was on the 5th, so that was Friday.
Oh, it's been a few days then. Yeah, so it could be
Yeah.
real soon.
Yeah, the other wrinkle is
Mm.
that between the point 5 patch and 9.1 vendor, it was a full month. And,
Yeah.
like patch 9.15 was Tuesday, and then this was Friday. So,
So it was a
way less
much
time in between.
faster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Um so, who knows, maybe they wanted this part to go faster just to remind people that more was coming, and then they'll space out like the 9-2 reveal video and the other things. Maybe that will go slower. But
Ah, good point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They probably have
I
a
mean,
lot more to announce with 9.2 since
yeah.
a lot more people are anticipating more things, more fixes, less annoying things. So, like you said, they probably want to make presentations of properly announcing things, maybe on a weekly basis. So that's why they may want
Yeah.
the PTR out sooner, just to get started with that ball rolling. Definitely.
I also wonder, I mean, November 16th is Season of Mastery in WoW Classic, and you have to wonder if Brightpaw, no, he's green. You have to wonder if they would want to give that some space to breathe, especially because it is something that's experimental. So maybe, and also, will the servers be able to handle, like, you know, a new game mode and PTR at the same time? That seems like it would be very difficult, potentially, or it would
Mm-hmm.
get messy very quickly. So I almost wonder if maybe the week of the 16th they'll have WoW Classic Season of Mastery launch, and then have that initial 9-2 announcement, and then like the week after, right before Thanksgiving, they would do a lot of the like early data mining. And
Presentation.
I also
Oh, mm-hmm.
I am curious what's going to be in the patch, because I mean, Shadowlands, everyone memes it. There's been so many systems on top of systems, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that um people are going to be very sensitive if 9-2 seems to be more of the same. Like, if you don't want someone to be like, oh, 9-2 gets another system and this seems complicated, like
Yeah.
corruption, which is a patch only system, and it will
Mm-hmm.
take forever to fix and it will be so imbalanced. So I almost wonder if the first 9-2 build will be a lot of like models and mounts and tier sets, but not a lot of the systemsy things. And then Blizzard will try to reveal the systems in a very polished way, and then they would be available for testing a few weeks later. I almost wonder how that's going to go, because
Yeah, it
I
is
think
really
it would be
interesting because
really,
even one system at this point is like People don't want
Or
anything.
if it was like this is the regardless of whether it makes sense or not, people when they more people pay attention to the first PTR build than their build. So if there's a
Oh,
system and it's very incomplete, people are going to remember that version of the system.
exactly.
So maybe it's better just not to be in there and just make another like big hype moment around the introduction of a 9.2 system. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
to be fair, I think that they could likely do something with expanding covenants in some form. But I also hope that they do things that show that they are aware of like the reusability of content or you know players feeling good without borrowed power.
Reusability.
Like I think
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like it would be good to see more things like Mage Tower in 9.2 or like well, what the heck are we gonna do with our covenants once we go back to Azeroth? Like,
Yeah.
do we have to but what's going to be the replacement covenant system? Oh no. So I think I would like to see more nods to sustainability, reusability in patch 9.2.
I think we just went through a quite a roller coaster. We first had Robo Perk speaking to us,
Oh no.
and then your voice became fine, and then we had a bit of a Robo Perk visually, but it seems that's fine too now. I'm not sure what's going
Weird.
on. Yeah,
Uh
but
do you want me to change the region? It's currently
yeah,
set to
let's
automatic. So
yeah
I wonder if it like changed regions on us.
yeah let's change it to Central or something just to keep it safe. So it's between the two of us.
Okay, it changed.
Okay, awesome. Hopefully this stays stable then.
Okay.
And no
I
robo
don't
perk. I didn't
so
interrupt you because it
you're
was still understandable. Um,
okay.
but yeah, it was a bit robo
I'm
perky.
sorry. Yeah, I blame the cat. Maybe he
Oh
sat on
no, you
things.
can't blame the cat. Now he's gonna go and break your furniture.
He will. But yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts about the systems because I know you were always like
Yeah,
corruption. Like, why is this taking a while to balance? Now, why is there a
yeah,
vendor? Like, it
yeah.
only feels at the very end.
Like I feel like sometimes like having systems is actually a cool thing, and it's sad that it's become a negative thing, which I completely understand. It's because the systems have in a way been abused, and also they're completely removed after the expansion is over. And so I think we should go back to systems that have worked well before.
Mhm.
I call
Yeah,
it systems, but ways of
yeah.
adjusting gear, because that's at the end of the day what these systems are made for, to change how your character works in one form or another. Go back to a simpler socket system. Make jewel crafting interesting. Maybe even socket bonuses. Not a whole new socket called Domination Shard. Just keep it to simple sockets. And then with that, maybe expand on enchants. We already have enchants. Just expand on enchanting, things that won't be removed later. Another system that we had in the past, glyphs. A lot of these effects and things that we
Hmm.
see in conduits or in domination shard effects or like a lot of other things, they could be in simple glyphs. Obviously reduce the amount of power that they give, but they could still be interesting for like customizing your character in a way which won't be gone after the expansion is over, but more adjusted for future. And I think it's also nice for somebody who doesn't play every single patch to feel like the game is recognizable. So, in a lot of
Hmm.
ways, when we have something like sockets, somebody who hasn't played for 3 years comes back and they understand what a socket is. But if you
The
come in
Heart of
and
Azeroth. That's like a really difficult sell. Or
yeah,
like
it is.
corruption.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
and
how do we get here?
at least Heart of Azeroth actually lasted the entire expansion, right? But then we have like
That's
corruption
true.
for one patch,
Right, or
like
shard of domination. Like, how do you explain that to someone coming back? Like, oh, it gets a gem, but sort of, and it only works with things with this one raid, but in certain situations, like, it's
yeah,
like the
yeah,
fantasy, like, gem.
yeah,
And I think that's interesting. You're highlighting professions because, with Blizzard recently put up a job listing for a designer that would be focusing on professions
good,
in the future.
yeah,
So hopefully that means they really want to expand them and have them be solid again, going
Mm-hmm.
back to uh,
Mm-hmm.
the roots. Like that's like a very, I mean, they talk about things like, oh, the Covenant choice is like RPG elements, but it's like, well, crafting, like that's really simple, but that's
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
RPG fantasy as well, and that is a
Mm-hmm.
unifying thread through every single
Absolutely.
expansion.
Yeah.
And people love going back and collecting old recipes. Like that's one way to be a collector. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
lots of fun things you can get. I
Recipes
mean,
is a good
even
point. Like make it
yeah.
maybe make it kind of rare to get certain recipes for certain gems, so that people who have them can become quite important on the server. And you still have the auction house, so you have that to just buy them as well. But instead of just get max level, learn all recipes, maybe make some of them like rage drops, or I don't know, maybe PvP drops or whatever. And at the end of the day, no one has to have those recipes, right? Because as long as some
Mm,
people have it, it'll be available on the auction house. And that's all that's important really for anyone to be able to enjoy the game. Because that's one thing in classic which
mm.
could be considered a more interesting approach to things. Not not to take back the respec cost of classic and put it in conduits,
Mhm.
and like there's
Right.
certain things that are more fun, and we need to stop reinventing the wheel with these systems, but
Yeah.
instead put them into the systems that already exist.
Yeah,
And
I
because
feel
that
like
then it also lasts over more expansions. And yeah, go on,
if
sorry.
something is pretty iconic from the past and like now it's no longer a thing, it's harder for people that have quit to reconnect to the game. Like if people remember glyphs from, like Wrath or Cataclysm,
Mm-hmm.
or if they remember things like, oh, meta gems did cool things. Like I remember Mop, I had this cool meta gem. Like I just, it's weird when you take away something recognizable that people uh thought of with the game, and then like you said, they keep trying to reinvent it with a system that sounds harder and harder to explain. Like even like Azerite essences, it's like, well, we have the heart of Azeroth with the Azerite traits and the Azerite essences.
Yeah,
um
it's like too many pieces to it.
yeah,
Simplify
as
it.
opposed to like, oh, in Mop I got this corrupted gem to put into my helm, where you're like, oh, like that's a really solid fantasy, and it's just like one
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
um
It was one
yeah.
socket, one gem, and it wasn't extremely hard to get either.
No.
And it wasn't difficult to understand. It wasn't difficult to explain. Like the shard system right now, there's still a lot of people who don't know exactly how it works, especially people who are not rating. And
Right.
it should
Yeah.
be easier to understand even at a glance.
Yeah, or it's like, what's gonna happen to the system when the raid is over? Like, there was
Exactly.
so much time spent on balancing, and oh, we couldn't take this person to race to world first because they got no shards, and people trying to figure out how the drop rates worked. And then it's like, okay, we're just gonna not deal with this in the future.
Yeah.
Um, and also on the flip side, I think uh going back to like glyphs, or even like things that happened in Mist of Pandaria, it's nice when there's a cosmetic aspect to these systems as well. Like minor glyphs are really cool, especially if they change your appearance, and with all
Mm-hmm.
the improvements they've been doing to transmog and character customizations, um,
Yep.
minor glyphs that do interesting effects, or maybe even modify how some of your spells look. I think that that could be pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
um I was thinking of right pawn, no. I was thinking of, with Mop, you had things like the cloak and the Shaw Touch sockets, but the weapons you could put the Shaw Touch gems in all had really cool appearances. And your legendary cloak had cool stats, but it also had a really cool looking proc for transmog with like wings on your back. So it's nice to have when systems have a cosmetic cool visual angle as well. It may not appeal to people min-maxing, but it does appeal to people that are more casual, that take things on their own pace. Maybe they are like a patch behind and they're like, oh, should I do this thing? And you know the shard system has lots of issues, but I bet if there was some cool like visual component with it, you might have people in 9.2 interested in working on this set. If your character could have, I don't know, like a navy blue appearance, or
Yeah.
had some like cool permanent effect on their back or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's I think it's important to have a reward system that can attract casuals as well, maybe with a visual, like you said, or some other kind of thing. And just at the base of it, less is more, right?
Yeah,
Simplify it, make it easier for
elevator
people to
pitch.
understand.
Yeah.
I mean, even the legendary system right now is actually terrible. Why is there
Mm.
so many legendaries? Like, if I start playing with an old, it's kind of scary and overwhelming because like, okay, so what legendary should I make? I mean, now they did make it easier in terms of
Mhm.
there's no limits. You can go in and farm as many legendaries as you want, but a lot of times it's nicer when there's fewer choices, because then it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like bloat, and each legendary means more, and it becomes more interesting and fun once you get it as well. You feel like you have a sense of completion, a sense of goal. But now there is no goal because there's so many options.
Yeah,
It's not a fun goal. Yeah.
it's like how everyone remembers the name of old tier sets, and then as like more gear options come, or when even with Titan forging, you don't remember the names of the gear you get because it's more interchangeable, and it's like, oh, this is one of many items that fits, as opposed to like I really wanted this trinket and I was so excited I got this, in Cataclysm.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's true.
but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you definitely. I think that's almost why Warlords did so well with marketing at the start and nostalgia, because like they highlighted old parts of Warcraft that people really liked, and then they tied the Molten Core event to the launch. And like you were going back to Molten Core, and there was like new versions of all these old items, and
Mhm.
it brought back a lot of people that quit because it was like really tying into what was familiar. Now, Warlords obviously had the Garrison mission issues and pacing, but the marketing campaign even tied into like the BlizzCon celebration was really effective, I think, at getting returning players back initially because it emphasized the familiar elements of the franchise
Yeah. Yeah.
that
No,
people
definitely
really
people like
liked.
that. Mhm.
Yeah,
Because it's
like
nostalgic and
orcs, famous weapon, molten
yeah.
core. Yeah,
Yeah, like for old players, it's nice for nostalgic reasons, and for new players, it's nice because for simplistic reasons. Sometimes
yeah.
when something is a little bit more simple, it makes more sense and is
It's easier to do better because like
yeah,
you will need to focus on a few factors and have it be really good. And I
yeah,
think that Shadowlands tried to do a lot, and then you had this villain like no one uh knew of before, which I guess sort of ties into what do we expect from 9-2. I mean, we assume we'll learn about this realm the jailer is going to through the portal, and we assume there'll be the raid where we confront the jailer and we learn more about Sylvanas, tied into this book. Um, I hope there's still more story threads because it feels like the jailer is kind of this like Thanos inspired character that just sort of popped up out of nowhere and like made us reconsider all the
reconsider
masterminding
life.
plans.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it would be weird if he went away, but if he stays, I still want the story to like pivot back to Azeroth, like maybe in a 925, because this villain is like unknown, and
Yeah.
the places he's going to sound all like cosmic-y, and we're told they're high stakes, but we don't have emotional attachment to it. So I think that his story needs to be a little more grounded in the Azeroth we know of. Like maybe
Mhm.
in 9-2 we face off against him, but then like we lose, so then we have to stop him in like Ice Crown or Azeroth, or 925.
Yeah.
Like that I think could be more interesting, because right now it's like, oh yeah, like remember those realms that like the brokers were talking about in that Tazavesh book, and like these lines that Venari said, like it's just very hard to get a returning player uh interested in to sell
Yeah.
returning players on
Mhm.
lore that is very, it's like we're in another realm, and then on top of the realm there's this new cosmic lore. There's several layers of unfamiliarity. So
Mhm.
uh I definitely think if they do a presentation that you need like a little lore intro or lore segment to set the stage properly, like maybe give a cinematic teaser, because it's very difficult to get someone that like maybe quit with Castle Nathria hype, like, oh, how do we go from, vampire castle to, cosmic fractal realm with first ones? It sounds
Yeah.
very abstract.
And it reminds me
Um,
this idea of the jailer as well, since he's meant to have been made so so important and so crucial to all the history as well, not just to what's happening right now. It does feel weird if we just defeat him and then it's over. Um,
no, no,
and
then we have like the jailer's boss is revealed in 10-0,
oh
which
no, but
yeah,
yeah, I'm not sure if I. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know. It's just so you keep like opening the peel and then there's something else inside, like those Russian
yeah,
toys. What are they
yeah, the
called?
Russian nesting dolls. Yeah.
Yeah, you just open it and there's another one inside. Yeah, I'm not sure. Not sure about that one. It reminds me a little bit of a disappointment feeling with Nazoth. Because I
Mm,
felt like Nazoth kind of was built up kind of, but not enough. I felt
mm.
like it could have gone into like a further expansion, but instead it kind of just died, and then disappeared.
Yeah, it was like a weird mix of like 2 or 3 expansions at the same time where you had the Alliance and Horde War, and
Mm-hmm.
then you had the N'Zoth situation, and
Mm-hmm.
then you had the whole like Ashara power play and Nazjatar
Mm-hmm.
situation. So I definitely feel like you could have split several of those concepts out. And like I think that, some
I
world
really
building
think
is
so.
definitely good. But
Mm-hmm.
like if it's like, oh, we want to set up like the Drust in, Kultiris and then we'll return to them in Ardenweald, like that's fine, but for things
Mm-hmm.
like big concepts like old gods or
Yeah.
the faction war, I think those could have been um split out. Or when all was said and done, like did we need the faction war? Like could Sylvanas have gotten progressively stranger off to the side, and then as we're fighting N'Zoth there's like a crisis and then she vanishes or betrays us? Like I feel like if we were focusing on N'Zoth all along and then we realized that we were ignoring this threat at home, I feel like that could have worked and just not
Mm-hmm.
muddied the story as much or had the factions yelling at each other for all of BFA. um
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that. So I'm really
um
hoping with Nazoth, sorry, with the jailer now, since it's trying to be made to seem like that he's been very huge
mhm.
in all the decisions made around things, that we don't just defeat him,
Yeah.
but something. I don't know what would feel good. What do you think?
So, I mean, if they said they wanted the jailer to be a return to like a villain that is like a simple big bad, it does seem like a missed opportunity with old gods because like
Mm-hmm.
they are clearly like, like a big bad and they have all this hype behind them, and they've been teased in WoW since forever, and people always get excited in past patches when one gets featured and people like all the whispers. So it does seem like
Oh, like a missed
returning.
opportunity that we could have just had
Yeah,
a gold god all along.
yeah, like the old god could have been like the big unifying threat. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
hoping somehow we go back to that in some way.
Hmm. If an
Like
old
there
god
were
is
hints.
behind jailer, then maybe everything makes sense again. Or does it?
Yeah. Or if it's like the cosmic forces fighting against each other, and if there's more an emphasis on that, it's like, well, um, the void shadow forces more aligned with the old gods, maybe that could come out to play. And there's been hints that they want to highlight different aspects of the light. We have Turalian, that is a bit of a warmonger. We have
Oh,
Anduin, that wields the light, but also the shadow, and he'll have interesting character development if he's saved. There was the Magor Orc quest line with Uro, so there could be like a light versus void contrast in 10-0 that could bring the focus back to the old gods and Brightpaw.
hmm. I wonder if that is the idea, because I feel like if we defeat the jailer and the story comes to a final, I think it feels really bad. But if
Yeah.
it's connected back to old gods, I think it could maybe be okay, and maybe a bit more understanding as well, that we'd never heard of the jailer because, well, he wasn't the mastermind behind it. Then it all kind of makes sense
Yeah.
again. Um, Interesting.
Also, like going
Like
back to
Nazoth
Ice
comes
Crown,
back.
yeah,
Yeah.
or like something with Old Gods returning, because there were. Sorry, the cat
Go.
is interrupting this very serious.
I can see it.
He's
It's
like,
like, I
no
need
old
space
gods. But
here. Removing
I
these
mean,
plushies.
the whole there were definite hints about old gods, in Ice Crown,
Yeah.
obviously in Ulduar,
Yeah.
talk that like the Saronite was driving people mad. Before we knew the full story with the jailer, there was speculation that Sylvanas, like maybe what she was seeing was an old god's illusion, because like she fell onto the Saronite, so there is an old god presence in that area of Northrend. It could be interesting to tie back into that, or have it be like a jailer forces versus like old god forces, those two cosmic forces clashing, or Ashara coming back because she vanished, so her story has a loose end that could return. Um, I'm sure she would be up to something. She doesn't seem to be like the lazy type. But yeah, either way, I hope that this presentation in 9.2 explains some of the stuff, because it would feel bad if after all this talk of like narrative and changing things, and then Final Fantasy with the storytelling, if this big reveal with Sylvanas's story arc or all this confusing cosmic stuff is just going to be like, oh, go read the book. So I hope that 9.2 can improve on um
Yeah.
yeah. Like even before the show, we were talking about how like even 815 had like more little storytelling quests than 915. So I hope I hope 92 can still try to tell more of the story through quests again.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because now, due to the Final Fantasy hype, I think a lot
Hmm.
more people will be anticipating and expecting story. Even people
Yeah.
who before never cared, I think, have a little
Yeah.
bit more interest to see where it's gonna go. Um,
Yep.
I'm not sure if, because that's the thing as well with, because we talked a little bit about this last week, I think it was, as
Hmm.
well, with WoW having so many different things that it's trying to focus on. It's trying to focus on stories, trying to focus on gameplay, it's trying to focus on other things, and story has never been central. We know that with like quest line for Torghast being completely deleted, and not
Yeah.
just skippable but just deleted. Um, so it's interesting to see what Blizzard will do going forward now that more people notice the story. If they will improve it, make it easier to understand, more chewable, maybe more accessible as well. Or if they're gonna
Hmm.
decide, you know what, you guys are right. Like our story isn't the best. We're just gonna tone it down even more. you know,
Right.
like we're not gonna make a Torghast storyline to then just delete it. We're just gonna decide to just not have it in the first place. It's gonna be interesting to see where that goes. And I think the 9.2 patch in general will be a very interesting patch, as it will be the first real patch since everything happened with
Mm.
the events this summer, and it's because since then we've had a lot of announcements and hints, or straight out like words from Ian himself talking about how they know they've been stubborn, and looking at how things are going to be different now. It's going to be interesting to see how 9.2 is, because we have to also consider that 9.2 was probably, for the most part, planned and decided before all this happened. So
Right.
it's would be interesting to see if they do have a system in place, regardless, but maybe try to like tweak it to make it not so difficult to get into. I'm not sure. It's going to be
Yeah, I
interesting.
mean, like if 915 was about all these alt friendly improvements, and
Yeah.
92 is then like, well, you can swap covenants, but there's this new thing that you can't swap,
Yeah.
or like the conduit energy 2.0, or again a patch specific system that sounds like corruption that people are worried about tuning, then I think it could get, people might worry that Blizzard like still hasn't fully um, understood
Mm-hmm.
how they need to change. That
Mm-hmm.
said, we discussed this last week when we were looking at Ian's interview with VentureBeat, and how his wording had slightly shifted since past interviews. He did say something to the effect how um, they're trying to unlearn like years of doing things differently. Let me try to find the exact quote. um
Yeah, I
it
remember.
basically, yeah, it was like there's some stubbornness, but clinging to those old lessons, some
Yeah.
things are hard to let go of when your training and your education as a designer and a developer on the team led to having these old things instilled in you. What was the right answer for the WoW player base and for the game 15 years ago may not be today. So that, for Ian is always going to sound like a lawyer because that's his training. But if you look at the tone of those words compared to the past, where it's like, covenants are good RPG fantasy. I think for Ian to say in his lawyerly way that the team can be stubborn and cling to old design philosophies, I think that's, admittance of a fault or something they need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Mm. Yes, yes. I
Okay.
was also just reading the notes here.
Oh, no
Um,
worries.
but yeah, sorry, I
Um,
got distracted.
yeah, it's all right.
Um,
Bright Paw is also being very distracting. But yeah, no, I do think that Ian is he just jumped over the computer. Bright Paw. But yeah,
Notes
I
can
do think
sometimes
that,
do that too. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ian in the interview is sounding more like down to earth and understanding that they need to change as opposed to like the players don't understand the vision. So I think that's promising. Um
For the most
but yeah,
part,
so
yes. There was
but
that
yeah,
small worrying
I
part
agree.
where he still thinks the Covenant thing was the right choice. But for the
Right.
most part, he did sound quite apologetic and admitting that they need to make some changes. So, and I think that's what the patches that are coming will show us. Like, is it true? If you're
Yeah.
claiming that you need to let go of some stubbornness, will we see that in the decision choices or in the decision making that are done for the patches that are coming? So that's going to be
Yeah.
really, really interesting to see.
Yeah, so why don't we discuss like what do we actually get in 915, cuz that launched a week ago, and it was interesting because before the show we were discussing and we were saying that there was a lot of alt-friendly improvements, but the hype period had passed, and when we compare it to something like 815, that had a lot of improvements, but also some like interesting pieces of content.
Yeah,
So, comparing my notes to 815, um, there was the mount for doing the war campaign on both factions. Um, there was, I think the most important thing was there was the Crucible of Storm raid, because we were saying
yeah,
covenant
a small
swapping
raid.
now is like
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but if you could covenant swap when Sanctum was still in progression mode, that would have been really hype. So I think that 915 would have been hyper if it's like, oh, by the way, here's like a mini raid so you can, you know, see
Mm-hmm.
what progression is like with the ability to swap covenants. I think that would have made the covenant swapping more hype. Obviously a
Actually,
lot more work.
very true. Very true. Crucible was
Yeah.
a two boss raid, right? And if they
Yeah.
could have had something like that for this 915, I think that would have been brilliant. Just in time for catch up systems in place, just in time for covenant swapping. Then I think that would be a good reason for people to even come back. Because for the most part, a lot of people have asked, 915, is that a good time to come back? And it's like, well, it's nice if you're playing already to come back. Well, like there's no new raid to get into, there's no new
Mm.
content. So if you have experienced those raids and things already, kind of, and then got bored, like sure you'll have better catch up systems, but there isn't really that much new stuff for you to experience. So having a raid like a two boss raid would have been really cool because then it would probably also motivate people to go back into the other raid, like Sanctum of Domination. Maybe people
Mm.
played, killed a few bosses, maybe three, four, and then quit. But then having a new raid just, coming up with all these changes, I think that would have made it a lot more encouraging for people to come back and try it. I think for the most part, people who have quit are probably just waiting for 9.2 instead.
Yeah. Also with 815, there were the two allied races introduced, Kultiran and Zandalari, which
Mm-hmm.
then came with their little like Paul, what are you doing? Like there was a little lore focused quest line that went along with them, like Talanji being coronated. And then leading up to the raid, there was the return of Zalatath and more old god hints. And then there was even a little quest line for the Before the Storm goblin and gnome couple. And
Oh yeah.
you
Mm-hmm.
could also tame Hati and got like story resolution on the Beast Mastery artifact. So, even in that sense, no, that wasn't like a major thing to do, but people were really excited to tame Hanti. Like that was an emotional connection, or
Mm-hmm.
uh, catching up on these characters from a book that people thought maybe had died, and seeing that they were alive or well. Like it, I think people were very happy to see the return of Xalatath because she's such a fun character. And then it's like, where did she go after the portal? So I think that little things like that, maybe aren't major. Maybe they won't keep people playing for weeks, but
It's like a small little
they
thing.
sound cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be like, oh yeah, like I'm sad that Hati disappeared from my Legion artifact. Let me, return him. He's the best puppy. Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So for all people were complaining about BFA, I do think that the point 0.5 patch was what was you know, pretty good, and it had some alt improvements like 915, but it also had little content things here and there that are kind of missing from 915. Now,
Mm-hmm.
915 will have the return of the Mage Tower, but that's in December,
Yeah.
and it's also seasonal. While, like
Yeah,
you
I
can
was gonna
still,
mention. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Like I think with
um,
the Mage Tower, it could actually be comparable to all those things, but
mhm.
the fact that it's seasonal, temporary, that kind of takes it away. If it was a permanent addition to the game, I think it would be very different.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean the patches aren't totally comparable, but I do think looking back that 815 with the raid, allied races and like the 4 or 5 little quest lines and the hunter tame um is that so those things are not as big as like Swords of Domination, but if you're a casual player, I think that, Xalatath and, Best Puppy, like that sounds like a cool, like short and simple, like this is fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um and of course also the timing, like 815 was uh a lot earlier in the expansion, several months after
Yeah.
the expansion as opposed to
Yeah.
915. So
Yeah.
um but yeah, hopefully, they haven't said this, but I do think that as part of constantly reinventing systems and not having a clear vision for the game, with sort of contradictory elements and always getting rid of stuff, it's hard to generate new stuff at a fast rate, right, Paw? So
Oh.
hopefully, if there is a philosophy shift, that means that stuff can get more efficient in the future. Because it definitely seems like Blizzard across their games is having a efficiency production pipeline issue, with like the earnings call having the Diablo 4 issues and like Overwatch 2 and WoW, and then we learned a few months back that Diablo Immortal was delayed. Like there's definite some like it feels like they could be smarter or more strategic about how stuff is designed and consumed. Like even with the Mage Tower, there were little quest lines leading up to each one, and those are gone. So it's like
Yeah,
they just
that's
they
true.
add these like interesting stories and they just get rid of them.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Um,
Back on the
yeah,
story topic. If we're gonna create story, then we should keep it. If we're not gonna keep it,
yeah,
we shouldn't waste time and resources on creating them, because that time could have been spent on creating something which will last. For even new
yeah.
players to enjoy.
Yeah, and I remember some of them weren't bad actually. Like the whole, like um, the God Queen. Like she was in a pretty shitty situation, and she was blinded by anger, but she also had a reason for it. It's like they weren't
Mm-hmm.
just throwaway stories. Some were
Oh
actually
no.
pretty interesting.
Yep.
So it's it's weird to sort of lose those things. Especially
Mm-hmm.
when some of these were well done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
Agreed.
yeah, so I guess if 915 is, oh, we learned lessons, I hope that 92 uh does not have ambitious one patch systems, has more
Yeah.
nods towards
One
sustainability,
patch systems. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
and they have like a more unified vision for their stories, so it's not just like, read a book and like here's some complicated thing in game, like there's more quests, maybe if, if there's more quests, keep it simple so people can understand it. Don't have it be something that could be deleted easily.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also hope it's not a repeat of patch 8.3 where it's like, oh yeah, pivot to old gods. Here's Uldum under the effects of the old gods. The end. Like, it. I think I would rather see them explain an existing like aesthetic or fantasy setting well, as opposed to, okay, here's some like new fractal realm and we're gonna abandon it, in the next patch, and not
Yeah.
really explain it. I would
Mm-hmm.
rather they say something like that for an expansion, and just like go deeper into an existing setup, because there's like so many questions with Shadowlands where you're like, you know, who is the jailer? Like, what is this cosmic realm? Like, you don't want
Yep.
people to feel totally lost.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah,
The more
above all, I just
familiarity, the more you enjoy it.
yeah, I want like return to raid, return to tier sets, things that look really cool. I don't want Sylvanas' story behind a book again with like shock and awe. It would
Mm-hmm.
be nice to see some more of that in game, or go back to like an enjoyable story versus a shocking story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, and I don't, if they do have systems, not super alt unfriendly or frustrating choices.
Yep. Because that is how
Um,
people play the game.
yeah,
They play alts. It's time to just
yeah.
open up everything.
Mm-hmm. Especially this late. I mean, like we're still in COVID, and I
Yep.
remember when we had COVID and we had that 8.3 content gap. Blizzard made it easier to level and play alls with experience and rep
I
gains.
remember.
And
Yeah.
it's like we're in a similar uh slow content phase. Maybe we should be
Mm-hmm.
thinking about going back to some more of these benefits in between. Like if Blizzard is encouraging people, oh, level alts, and then they make it difficult to play your alts a few months later, that's kind of frustrating.
Yeah. Like, I remember the day achievements became account wide. This was many, many years ago. And
Yeah,
I'm waiting for the day when reputations are all account wide and everything is just account
yeah,
wide. Because at this point, we play alts to experience a new class most of the time, and
right.
then restricted to that class and that class's abilities and that class specific items and quests to be character specific, but anything else should just be account wide, really,
Yeah.
with the way that we're playing the
So
games nowadays.
yeah. So on that note, one new bit of little content that collectors might care about is a new blue Murloc battle pet that was a bit of a surprise, that was discovered yesterday to go along with a blue Murloc Funko Pop on the Blizzard store. And it's cute because you go back to Legion Dalaran, and you go all around like Eye of Ashara,
The
and
quest
then
line to get this pet, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So you go back to Legion content, and it's a fun little quest line,
Mm-hmm.
and you get a Murloc, which is always sought after because there aren't too many in the game, and some of them are very expensive because they're tied to collector's editions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I also liked how it sent you back to old areas, because if you weren't playing in Legion, um, maybe it sent you to an area you weren't familiar with. And then, with, an instance like, Eye of Ashara, you're like, oh, I'm flying over these zones. What's here? Oh, like, what's Cosmo? Like, what's the river that's up there? It makes you think about other things in this area that maybe you ignored for 5 years. Or just Legion Dalaran is really beautiful.
Yeah,
um it's a lot more welcoming than Orbus. So
it's
if you
true.
missed it first time around, you could be like, hey, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a
So
nice city.
yeah, I think more stuff like this is cute to add to the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
And
agree.
like,
And it's a
yeah,
little quest line as well, so just doing something in game for something in game. I think that's awesome.
yeah, I do hope that they, since there's the Murloc Funko Pop, I think it would be cool if they added a plush to go along with it. Um
Oh yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
they're
Because we
really
have a
cute.
bunch of them.
Yeah, like last year.
That
Oh
purple
no,
one?
Grandpa
Yeah.
wants this. Yeah. So,
Uh-huh. Ah, he's like, it's
um,
mine now.
yeah. So last year around this time, they added the purple one, Glimmer in Grizzly Hills. And
Mm-hmm.
first there was the Murloc Funko that came out, and then later on they uh added this little guy that Brightpaw is entranced by. Um, so yeah, it would be cool if they added a Murloc plush in time for the holidays. Um, and yeah, Brightpaw, no, don't knock the microphone over. He nearly did.
Oh.
Brightpaw, you can have the Murloc, but not the microphone.
Yeah. Can play with the plush.
Okay, that was the sound of him playing the plush. Um,
Oh, I think we have Robo Perk back.
Brightpaw, what did you do?
Ah, a little bit of lag, but maybe not too bad. I think you're fine, actually. Say something?
Test. I just wait. I see it. It just went away from red.
Okay, so it's looking better. I think it's
Yeah,
sounding better too. Okay, nice, yes.
yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Cool. But yeah, definitely get that Murloc pet, because it's pretty easy and it's not like an elaborate secret. It's just a nice little quest line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Indeed.
yeah, more Blizzard industry news. We learned yesterday that
Yeah.
Activision Blizzard, while they haven't made an official statement, several employees have confirmed that they are taking steps to improve compensation among temporary contract employees. They are giving temporary workers Thanksgiving and winter breaks as paid time off as opposed to unpaid. They are increasing the minimum hourly rate. They are giving temporary workers paid holidays. They are increasing, if you have to work through an international agency, they are increasing the sick paid time to be comparable to the temporary employees
Employed.
hired through
Mm-hmm.
Blizzard. And they're also going to be offering career growth programs for the temporary workers. So if you're not familiar with this, many entry level positions like QA or customer service are considered temp work. Um, you end up, basically working full time, but there's no real sense of stability, and you don't get as many um,
Benefits.
benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not unique to Blizzard. It's something that a lot of studios sadly participate in.
Yeah.
So hopefully, by Blizzard taking action, that will send a message to other companies in the industry
Mm-hmm.
to work on changing this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
because there's plenty of
and
people working for, especially Q&A, like you said, or customer service rather,
yeah,
because they get invited, as like a temporary worker, and then they hope to
yeah.
get hired later on. But sometimes they're there for years. So, I think this is actually quite a big deal for all those people who are in that situation, because now they'll at least have the same benefits as being full time employees, even if they're not considered so on paper.
Yeah, and I mean, stuff like hearing like, oh, uh, the Thanksgiving and winter breaks are basically unpaid time off. So instead of it being like a time where you can celebrate, you're anxious that you're not working and getting paid. Like that seems that seems really
Yeah.
stressful.
Yeah.
Um, it's like you basically have to find like work somewhere else over the holidays to make ends meet. Where usually the holidays it's a time to relax or celebrate, but now the holidays are like, oh God, I'm not paid to work. Like I'm forced to not be at the office. So
Yeah.
I think that this is definitely a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Although it would be good to see an official statement from the company. I definitely believe all the employees tweeting the same thing. It would have bigger reach if this was a statement on the Activision website that the stakeholders would be paying attention to.
Yeah. I
Um,
that's yeah, that's very true. But at the same time, I kind of like that we found out about this in this way, because it
Yeah.
feels a lot more organic and
Hmm.
real because it's coming from the people who are working there who are happy about this change. But yeah,
Yeah.
it would be of course nice to have an official statement as well, just to make it more concrete and real for the shareholders to see as well, because then it's actually going to happen and not like, oh, actually never mind, taking this back.
Right.
We considered it, but we decided to not sign the contract that makes it happen or whatever. It would be nice to have it officially 100%.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's still really huge that they were able to the minimum hourly rate. It's not amazing in California, but other people are like, hey, I learned from this tweet that I got a 25%, increase, working in like, QA or customer service, or Texas is not as expensive to live in. So many people are happy to learn that they were at minimum wage at Blizzard, and it's not great, but it's in some cases it can be a sizable increase.
Yeah, especially
And
for people who don't have that much experience in the field, who
yeah,
might be in the sort of lower roles within the
right,
company. If you have a little bit more leeway with how much money you make, then life can become a little bit more convenient and less stressful. Because especially for people who live in Irvine, which is a very expensive place in general, it's rough. But like you said, this is not a Blizzard specific thing. Because there's a lot of discussion about that too. Like having this good news is also being bringing light to how low the pay is in general, living in such an expensive place. And those are topics that are important in general across other companies too, because Blizzard is not the only one that works or that runs their company in Irvine. We have, isn't Riot like really close by as well?
riots in Los Angeles proper.
Okay,
I think
okay.
Carbine is in Irvine or that
Mm-hmm.
that region.
Mm-hmm.
Twitch used to have an office in Irvine.
Mm-hmm.
Razer has offices in Irvine, so there's a lot of like gaming tech companies there.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
And having
but
said
yeah,
that,
it's
it's not
also
like Los Angeles is very cheap either.
no, it's
They're
like
all quite
Los Angeles
expensive.
is even worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also funny looking at the Wowhead comments because the people in the US are like, hey, like that's awesome, like great job having more things. And all the people from Europe are like, what? Like,
Especially the
you're
sick
happy
days
over.
because it's so low
Yeah,
compared to what people
yeah,
get in Europe. But then you
yeah,
also have some people from East Europe be like, that's quite a lot of money, you know?
right. Yeah,
Because you have that situation in a lot of countries in East Europe as well, where they have a lot lower minimum wage, also because they have a lot lower living costs as well.
right.
So
Yeah,
there's some people like $17, like wow, like
yeah,
they're actually making so much money, and it's like
yeah.
it's not that much, not with the living conditions and everything that they have and the cost of rent and everything.
Mhm.
I know this myself as well because I have relatives who live in Turkey, and like the average rents that I hear from people that I know are very very low compared to what I experience here in Sweden. It's like sometimes like 1/10 of the cost, and it's crazy. And to reflect those kind of things, sometimes the salaries would also be lower, and it was interesting and kind of funny almost, how like you said there was such a big difference in people's reaction. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
that's so much money, or it's like, oh no, that's so little money. And then you have the Europeans who are commenting on, you only have that many holidays, like holiday paid holiday days. um it's yeah, it's crazy how different areas of the world is.
yeah. But at the very least, they are making some demands, even though they're not an official union. They are seeing, the workers are making some gains, and it is getting players to be more analytical about the situation, as opposed to being like, oh, working at video games is amazing. I would do it for free. Now people are like, oh, like this industry has issues. I'm now a more informed consumer.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I think it's really
but yeah, I mean,
important.
yeah. I mean, overall, I think that this is a good first step, which sort of brings
Definitely.
us to, why it's interesting how this was announced now, because you'd think Blizzard would want to announce this at the earnings call if they're announcing, like Bobby's cutting his pay and they're pledging to, hire more women and they're being more
Interesting. Yeah.
transparent.
Why didn't they mention
So
this at the earnings call?
yeah, which kind of ties in with our last topic of like, let's analyze the earnings call because you have to wonder if this was escalated with Jen O'Neill leaving.
Mm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
it definitely seems like they would have wanted to announce this sort of thing at the earnings call if they knew about it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point because, or does telling your shareholders that you're now going to pay your workers more, does that make the shareholders feel more positive about the company? Maybe shareholders don't really care about that.
I mean, if they phrased it as like, we conducted a review and we've decided to be like a leader in staying competitive. We found this internal firm found that we were not at the forefront of the industry and we've adjusted things and now we are, we plan
Oh, you're
to
lagging a lot.
be a
Okay, perk is
diversity
gone.
compensation, all these things.
Whoa.
Huh.
Okay, that was funny. So we heard like one word per 3 seconds,
Yes.
and then we heard everything you said in like 2 seconds. Very sped up. We
Yeah.
could not hear what you said, but I think you're
Yeah.
back now.
Yeah, that's weird. But
Yeah,
yeah, you
you were
you would
saying.
think, yeah, I think that they could have spun this as, this was part of their pledge to have like, the like welcoming working conditions, how they want to be a leader, and what do they say, like being ethical or commitment to a safe, inclusive uh working environment, how they want to be a model workplace. They could have put this as a step, like, oh,
Mm, mm-hmm.
um we've analyzed our freelance, our contract benefits and have, changed them to be a leader in this field, remaining competitive to ensure, we get the best workers, something like that.
Yeah,
I think they
yeah.
could have done something.
I think that's true. I think they could definitely spin it into becoming something good. I think it as a stat, I feel like the shareholders or investors probably wouldn't really care because they just want to see a
Mhm.
result, right? But I
Right.
think, like you said, they could definitely put it in as a pitch to wanting to be one of the best
Mm.
overall. By making sure that the workers are paid well because then they will do a better job, and also maybe it makes the company look more lucrative to other people too who are looking for jobs and things like that. So
Yeah. There's
I
also
think, yeah,
so many
yeah. Mm-hmm.
high profile departures that it's like, what are steps to retain employees, um, and
Yeah.
keep them productive. Like even if a shareholder views an employee as like human capital, like it's something that sounds very robotic and not, not reflecting humanity.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you keep people effective and staying at the company so the games get done on time? And it's like, well, we, you know, improve the workplace by doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah. Do you want to discuss the actual earnings call a bit? Because we sort of
Yeah, I think
discussed it
that's fitting
during the
now.
show, and then it
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, well, there's like even more things when you have a week to reflect on it.
Yeah.
So the thing that stood out to me is they said Blizzard revenue grew 20% year over year, driven by the successful launch of Diablo 2 Resurrected. And when you hear that statement, if you didn't know Blizzard, you'd be like, oh, it was a quiet quarter, but then like Diablo popped up, so that's why they had the increase. But it's not exactly the case because patch 9.1 launched the day before quarter three started. So
Yep.
all those users would have carried over for the start of July. So when you think about it more, they probably had an MAU surge at the very start of July, and then like they lost all those gains, were wiped out, and then Diablo at the end increased things again. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I think
it
you're definitely right
yeah,
there. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it wasn't like things were quiet. It's like no, like quarter three also had was reaping the benefits of patch 9.1 users initially, and then that all got like
Yeah, because
destroyed
that
by
was a whole
lawsuit.
new raid, and people were
Yeah.
watching World First and
Mhm.
logging in and checking out the new system. Even if they don't like it, they log in to
Right.
check it out and maybe attempt to get a part of it. So definitely, the 9-1 hype was definitely eaten by quarter 3 in terms of activity. 9-1 in terms of sub count was probably baked into Q2 because anyone who would
Mm.
want to play it probably subbed right before it.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of activity, it would definitely have affected the Q3 numbers by quite a bit.
Yeah, like even if someone resubbed um in June, like even if they had the like cheapest monthly option, they would have counted as a monthly active user for July
Exactly.
because they still have been active then.
Yeah, they would still be playing in in July, exactly.
Another sentence that was interesting to unpack was they said that WoW revenue was down, but the game was on track to deliver its strongest engagement and net bookings outside of a modern expansion year in a decade. So at first you're like, oh, that sounds pretty great considering Shadowlands is, so slow. But then you have to think, like there's so many qualifiers in that sentence
Yeah,
that it's like, okay, so um what are the other things to compare it to? Because if we were just talking about BFA, where it was like, oh, we had like Azerite armor and 815, or like the Warlord's lull where there was like nothing for a year. So there aren't very many years to compare it to if every other year has an expansion. And the thing that really changes things is that we had TBC go live.
yeah.
Um, and
TBC
that had
is
like,
huge.
yeah, like that's huge. Like that is basically a
That's like having
new,
2 expansions in the same year.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And we're also going to have Season of Mastery as well. So it definitely feels like they're making it seem like if you were just a shareholder that maybe didn't know the nuances, you'd be like, oh, retail WoW isn't getting an expansion, but stuff is still up. I guess Shadowland is engaging. But the elephant in the room is like TBC and the Dark Portal Pass, bringing all those old players back, like
Yeah.
another expansion, like you said.
Yeah.
So I think it's unfair to compare it to because, like, we're just looking back and we're like, yeah, 815 actually had decent stuff. Why isn't 915 having it? Which is objectively better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh well, TBC is making the numbers look better now because it's huge.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, it's a really good point because that kind of makes it sad as well because that means as long as TBC is keeping up with the numbers and we have 2 games going on at the same time, it will forever boost the activity for
yeah,
whatever the expansion is right now. Like if we continue on and then Wrath happens, and
yeah.
then at the same time we have these classic resets like Season of
Mhm.
Mastery, all these extra things are going to bump up the numbers and make whatever the current expansion is look good to shareholders. I
Yeah,
mean, to be fair, we are only paying 1 subscription to
right.
get access to all of them. But yeah,
Yeah, it's just, it's like looking back objectively, I'm like, Legion 715 had a lot of stuff. Even BFA 815 had some things of merit, like the raid. Or
mm-hmm,
then we also had, A2 with Azerite essences, and, Najatar was pretty cool. We got,
mm-hmm,
a bunch of new zones.
mm-hmm,
More stuff than the off year for Shadowlands, and it's just like it feels weird that on paper it's like, well, this was the best year, and it's like, well, objectively the content was stronger in other, interim phases during
yeah,
expansions.
yeah,
So it definitely is misleading, even though uh it sounds good on paper
mm-hmm,
for stakeholder.
mm-hmm.
Um
And I mean,
and
if you
then
enjoy all parts of the games, then yeah, then you're then you're enjoying things because you're paying 1 sub and playing multiple games, which is great. Um, but if you're only playing one part of it, then it can be a little bit sad in terms of hearing how well it seems like they're doing. Then again, I mean, this is just their talk to the shareholders, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully, it doesn't mean that they're gonna spend less effort into retail just because it's being carried by TBC. Also, TBC hype is going down.
Oh yeah.
Season of Mastery is potentially gonna build
Well,
it up a little bit.
yeah. It was funny. I mean, the hype is going down, but I don't know how much you were following along with the news last night about
The nerfs.
Blizzard announced the raid nerfs, and like people were very upset to the point where an hour later Blizzard had to issue another blue
I
post being
heard
like,
about that.
yeah, being
Wait,
like, this
was
is
it
clearly
within
to
an
run the
hour?
program. Yeah, within an hour they had
Oh, I knew that it
walked
was
it back.
fast, but I didn't realize it
Yeah,
was within an hour. But you see,
yeah.
that's impressive too. Like
Yeah,
the
that
Blizzard
that's
that
a
we've
good thing.
known for the past 5 years would not listen and
They'd be like,
like
"Well, you don't
change something.
understand, like, the
Yeah,
vision is this."
yeah. Like we know what we're doing, guys. Like this is the
Yeah,
best for most players. I'm sorry, you hardcore people may not be happy, but this is
right,
better for
right.
everyone. You know,
Yeah,
that's impressive. And that does make you a little bit hopeful as well because that's Blizzard reacting fast to things. I'm not sure if you remember or if you were following, but they talked about nerfing the hunter trap on retail, and
yeah.
that was getting a lot of bad reception as well, and people were not or bad feedback, sorry. And I think they reverted that change 2 3 days later or something,
Mhm.
and I think that's great too. You know,
Yeah,
it's okay for them to consider doing things, but then if they look at the feedback and actually listen to it, I think that's great.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's also interesting because it could be an example of, oh, well, TPC seems to the hype might be dying down, but people are very passionate about this one aspect
That's
of
true. It does
TBC.
show that too.
So,
Yeah, that people are passionate about it. People are playing.
yeah, so it's like maybe Blizzard, can do more things in that vein if this is the community that is loyal to TBC.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, but yeah, I guess the biggest thing from the earnings call that we wanted to reflect on again was the Jen O'Neill situation. I mean, the news broke while we were um
Mid
doing the
show.
show,
Yeah.
and I think that like our opinions are mostly the same, but just having a week to think on it, there's definitely been a lot of people discussing stuff. I think what stands out to me with the follow-ups is that we haven't had any on Blizzard's end. Like we don't
Yeah.
know if there's going to be another co-lead or
Yeah,
a
there's been no
council.
words. No words on it. No
Yeah.
statements, no further no comments like from Quick himself as well.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Um
Cook is talking about everything from, like, I'm boosting, here's my Arthas statue, my Raider I/O, and it's like, well,
or
why aren't
he didn't
you
mention
tweeting
boosting
about this?
again, did he?
No, he didn't, but it's just like, he likes to talk about his, like, day-to-day
He
stuff at
talks
Blizzard
about
and
things,
playing
yeah.
games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or he'll be like, "I just met with their cinematic team, they're so awesome." So, I definitely think it would have been reassuring if he tweeted stuff, although, he did say something during the, earnings call that was professional, but, a lot of people have questions as to, Blizzard clearly wanted a co-leader council, and a lot of people I think view Jen also like it was a symbolic thing of hope as well. Like she had a good track record, seemed to understand issues, like was very sensitive to things, and people just was sort of just like a obviously, she was there for the work she was doing, but she also had sort of like this symbolic like figurehead role of like, oh, like that's really cool that Jen is here. Like it made people uh hype or think that maybe Blizzard was showing
Mhm.
some promise after, they had issues talking about, oh, we don't want to like, you know, apply our hiring practices for executives to improve diversity. Like, they had that whole PR scandal last year. So it definitely feels like her leaving is bad for morale, and in the wake of
Yeah.
that, people are just very confused as to
Confused.
what's going on. Like, will
Mhm.
there be more people? Like, is Blizzard committed to co-leads, or is that a PR stunt and now they're just going to go back to one person leading? If that's the case, what
Mm-hmm.
does Quick think about diversity or, improving the morale of the company? And then, like, you start seeing, because he's not saying anything, you start seeing employees tweeting things like, oh, he didn't get back to me about office hours, or he didn't get back to my, tough question on, like, this topic. And it just, a narrative will be constructed if the leadership doesn't say anything
Yeah.
directly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to talk in this moment with this happening because it is quite like devastating for a company to have to announce something like this in the first place. You put two co-leaders together, one man, one woman, and then the woman decides to leave very soon after, and
Right.
it feels worrying. And I mean, Jen also had experience at Activision, so it's not like she was new to the company either. So it does make you wonder and be quite confused as well. If they had hired in a new person who came in from the outside, kind of what like Townsend seems like. If they had just hired someone from the outside, I think most people would have been like, yeah, good, get rid of like the token woman kind of thing. But Jen being there actually felt fitting because she had experience with Activision, and it makes it more sad that she did leave, and leaves us confused and a bit worried about what that's supposed to mean.
I mean, like, sometimes with tech, you have people that maybe like hop between companies, and that's more like, it's not like, oh, I hate this company, but it's just like, oh, I'm an expert with all these big tech companies, like, I, all the ins and outs, I look at all this experience, I'm a great advisor. But that wasn't Jen. She was pretty much like loyal on the Activision side of things. Like, you have to wonder if uh was Activision so different from Blizzard, because the lawsuit mostly focused on the World of Warcraft team at Blizzard. Like, was the culture so different that, like, once she got up close and personal, it's like, oh my god, nope. Like, or
Oh yeah, because she
did she
wasn't in
think,
Blizzard before, but she was
right?
under Activision.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then she's like,
So,
"Oh
like,
no,
and she's
Blizzard is bad."
like, yeah, I mean, like, she's been pretty loyal to the company. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like, oh, like, we hired someone that just, like, she's at Riot, she's at Blizzard, she's at Ubisoft. Like, she stuck to Activision for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, maybe people were like, oh, they just hired a woman to be a figurehead. It would be sad if she wanted to enact change. And then it turns out that people just viewed her as like the token hire, and she actually couldn't push a lot of things through. Like, oh, we hired the woman, PR solved. And she's like, no, I actually want to do, you know, we need to make more change. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just really bad, and I definitely feel like the silence is kind of worrying. And when this was announced, looking at the stock market, things really dropped.
Oh
Let me
yeah.
see if they went back up.
So before
Right.
Quick and Jen were both, or Mike and Jen, they were announced as
Yeah.
co-leaders. What
Hmm.
is Mike now?
Let's see. Um, but it's also like, if he if he is the sole person, was that his decision? Was that the Activision board's decision? I feel like if he stays on as the solo leader, there needs to be a statement being like, many of you were happy that, there was a man and woman co-leading, um and, you may have concerns now that it's back to, like, something solo and conventional again. We're keeping this, but we're also going to, like, invest in the following initiatives. Like, I think you need a statement with that, because people were very happy with the setup, and now it's like, oh, we just sort of, you know we just kind of went back.
Yeah, went backwards. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Effective immediately, Mike Ybarra will lead Blizzard. Um, so I guess leader. That sounds like awkward.
Leader,
that
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like, I don't know, like you're in an RPG, not like a company. Um, like you're leading the
Lead
dungeon party.
director?
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know these corporate terms.
Yeah, but I think that's a great example of we need the statement being
We don't
like,
know
this
what's
is the
going
chain
on.
of
Yeah.
command at Blizzard. This is his official title. And yeah, I do think that it would be good if Blizzard had something being like, many of you were very happy when we announced the co-leads with a woman, and now we don't have that setup anymore. So you're wondering if, you know, we've just reverted. Here are some other steps we're taking in other parts of the company at the high end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like maybe talking about other things with executives or studio leads. I also saw some tweets from other people, that women that recently left Blizzard, being like, there were so few of us, and then we all left in the last year, and you kind of need to think about the environment where women get hired and then suddenly leave.
Yeah.
There's the concept of the glass cliff, where it's like the women get promoted when it's like the impossible situation where they have to clean up the mess, and they look bad even if they're trying really hard.
Yeah.
um so you almost have to wonder if the people who were talking about being most senior at Blizzard and leaving, were, including Jen, were part of that situation. She's just like, nope, I'm not gonna just like fall off the cliff into this mess. I'm going to, forge another path.
Yeah. Go somewhere else. It certainly
Yeah,
feels like it. It's it does feel like she was not happy with what happened.
right.
Um, but I hope that it was more of just an unfortunate timing, that she just
Yeah,
didn't really want to be co-leader in the first place, and was kind of put in the position and then realized it was too much for her.
yeah,
Rather than become the co-leader, realize what a mess it is, and then leaving. Um,
right.
yeah, I don't
But
know.
yeah, it's just, you know, obviously we're all in shock after this was announced,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been a week, and
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think people want to know what the next steps are. Like, I think that um the information for the contractors at the lower end is really good.
Oh yeah.
But there are other people that are like, oh, so if you're a woman trying to climb through the ranks and be like a game producer, like, at the higher end, this seems demoralizing. Like, you can't, you're facing the glass ceiling or the glass cliff. um and like, we don't know what to call Mike. We don't know what his
Yep.
role is. We don't know if uh Blizzard is gonna change up leadership, or if Activision's like, we've had it with Blizzard's delays, like Bobby Kotick is now the Blizzard leader. Like, you don't know if there's like a major restructuring
Yeah.
going on, where uh Blizzard is given less free reign. But yeah, if you look at the market summary,
Mm-hmm.
so before this all happened, it was at $91, and then when the lawsuit broke, um it hit a low of then $80 after the walkout,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was um like in the 70s, and then Jen O'Neill announced she left, and it just dropped to $66, and it stayed there.
Mm.
uh
Mm-hmm.
so going from 91 to 66 is not really good.
Nope.
um and her leaving has, sort of going back to, oh, money talks. If
Yeah.
shareholders ignore the human aspect, it's like, well, the money is talking. The markets
Yep.
are in shock that she left. So,
Yep.
you know, we need to start seeing reasons to stabilize things. Like, maybe Blizzard should be a council of, like, I don't know, 5 people, where people specialize in different things to rebuild. Or if they're gonna
Yep.
do one person, explain, like, things they're doing elsewhere to improve company culture. But it definitely seems that
I
the
see the
markets are
drop.
panicking. Yeah, like
Yeah, like
that. It
the
was
drop with Jen was actually the biggest drop so far.
yeah. It just was like a shelf.
Overnight. Yeah.
Yeah, it went from 77 to 66. Like, it just
67.
was like,
Oh,
oh, like,
66 even. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, and
So
right before the 77, it's like 79, so it's like over
yeah,
$10 within like 2 days or something.
right. And you
And it
almost
stayed
wonder
there
if
for a week now.
seeing how much the lawsuit drop, which was smaller, led to investor groups complaining that Blizzard did not fully disclose the element of risk. You almost
Mm-hmm.
wonder if if these companies will be like, Blizzard's in violation. They did not properly convey that the leadership could be temporary. Like
Yeah.
that. They didn't let us know about these factors that could have market instability if someone left during the transition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you almost have to wonder if there's going to be like a bunch of alerts popping up with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I
The
definitely think
initial
that.
the initial scandal was that July 23rd.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it dropped like $5 that day. So yeah, this fall is definitely bigger in one day.
Yeah. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I think that
Also, I noticed
yeah, it's not good.
we were looking at some of these numbers before, and we noticed the
Mhm.
drop at back in 2018, which I believe was the "You guys don't have phones" the immortal
Yeah.
announcement. That had a bigger fall or a steeper
Yeah.
fall than what has happened this year, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean there could also be other factors taking place like I'm not I don't know, like
Yeah, I don't
market
remember what
recessions or
happened.
stuff like that. Um
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's funny. I'm googling it and I have all these news like, "Oh, Activision low, like buy now, like investment opportunity rising." And I'm just like, "Oh no, I'm going to get spammed with like stock market ads now." um
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely is interesting how it was on an upswing. It seemed to hit a high in February at
Yeah.
103.
Yeah. So last year around COVID, it went back
Yeah.
to what it was back in 2018 before the drop.
Yeah.
So it took them
Mhm.
2 years to build up. And then
Yeah.
they were reaching some big highs earlier this year. And then highest ever. And then the scandal happened in the summer.
Yeah. Which is
Poor
kind of funny
Blizzard.
because I mean, Shadowlands was not in great shape and all these games were not announced they'd have delays, but clearly they were not being developed on schedule. If, all this stuff happened, Blizzard did
Yeah.
not have a stable foundation. So people should not just go by numbers and be like, oh, Blizzard was doing great in February. The stock numbers were up because it's like, well, maybe in the short term, but in the long term, like, it's going to create this mess. And now we're in the middle of the mess.
Yeah.
So people can't just be like, oh, our MAUs are stagnant, and we have nothing new to announce. But hey, the stocks are going well. Positive spin. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely a chaotic situation, and
Mm-hmm.
I do hope we get more. I hope we get some more follow ups on this.
Yeah. I just want to see
So
continued. So right now, for example, we've seen that they have been quite quick with feedback
yeah,
for small things, but still, small changes that they announce have received feedback and then they have quickly reverted them. I think that's good.
yeah.
And then I want to see more statements from them.
Hmm.
Important things like this Jen O'Neill stuff, what that's supposed to mean. Are we going to get a new co-leader, or is Mikey Barra going to be alone leading? What's his role then officially?
I mean, if
And
he's alone, then it's like more scrutiny. Like I think we mentioned this very briefly. Like remember how there was that technology officer, I think Ben Kilgore, that was mentioned or like heavily referenced in the lawsuit, and uh like Mike Ybarra has some recent-ish tweets calling him like a friend and getting together for dinner. So it's like, well, if you're by yourself, like you might be under more scrutiny now if people
yeah,
start like digging through recent things, and it's like, like, yeah, you seem to be friends with someone in the lawsuit and you didn't say anything on this. That's, you know, have your
mm,
opinions changed,
yeah,
um, you know, you know,
I didn't know about
like
that.
in the
Mm-hmm.
absence of something new, people will
Mm-hmm.
look for old statements to form
Mm-hmm.
opinions, and stuff like that being there isn't, awesome.
Isn't the
So,
best. No,
yeah.
definitely not. This is not a good time to have any dirty laundry. Not a
Yeah.
good time.
Um,
But yeah, I
but
also want the
yeah,
future
yeah.
patches to continue reflecting this idea of listening more to us and
Hmm.
not going too far with the restrictions and um, to more simple times.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder when the community council will be starting up and how that will affect patches because if it's not upcoming stuff, like is this more like talking about retail live as opposed to PTR? So it'll be curious to see who's selected, how frequently the developers talk, how the community covers it,
Mm-hmm.
especially if council members say unpopular opinions,
Yeah.
that person get
Yeah.
piled on, and like, will this actually lead to change? Like, will people be talking about, oh, I was in a pug today, it felt great, or is it more like, oh, on the PTR, like these class changes, like this system feels off? Because if
Mm-hmm.
the community council can only talk about things that are on live servers and people are concerned about the PTR and like systems bloat and choices, then it feels like it could like not be serving like its optimal purpose because I'm sure a
Yeah.
lot of people want to discuss the PTR before an issue with the PTR goes to live and then
Mm-hmm.
it's like too late to fix.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Because that's been a huge issue before. Things are pointed out but
Yeah.
not listened to, and yeah. We don't want to mistake we don't want to repeat mistakes. That's the
Hmm.
phrase. We don't want to repeat mistakes, or we don't want to see a repetition of mistakes, because at this point I think a lot of people are quite tired and frustrated and are wanting to be hopeful, but need to see reasons to. So
Yeah, like the stakes are really high now.
yeah,
So,
they really are. And I
um,
believe that's it for
yeah.
today. I
Yeah,
think
there
we
was no
covered
surprise
everything.
news during
Mm-hmm.
the show.
Mm-hmm.
Only thing I saw was that Blizzard put up hiring notices for November, and just looking at it quick, there's UI designers. They're looking for a principal game designer, an encounter designer, a quest designer, a WoW Classic technical designer, an associate game director. So it seems like they are hiring across
Quite a lot,
the
yeah.
board.
Mm-hmm.
Associate is more like the entry level, um,
Okay.
I think. Um, and then senior is a higher tier. Bright Paw.
Gotcha.
Oh my god. What is he doing? He's
Yeah,
behind
he's in
me.
a hunting plushies mode.
No, he's in the
Oh,
knock me
he's
out of my chair
oh.
mode.
I thought he was climbing. I thought he was trying to climb it again.
Probably in
Oh,
5 minutes.
it's like,
He's being a troll.
mom, I heard you say that was a wrap, and now you're still sitting here.
Uh, but yeah, so nothing too notable with the open roles, just that they
Yeah,
definitely seem to be trying to, you've got
that's
things
good.
that are
Mm-hmm.
associate beginner like level and then principal game designer at a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. They definitely, need more hands
Oh,
on deck.
definitely.
So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. That's a good thing to see. And also the
yeah,
announcement today was also good to see. Even though it's
yeah,
in many ways seen as minimal, because it is, it's still
yeah,
important because nobody forces Blizzard to do that. And
yeah,
even other companies that has gone through scandals did not necessarily give any pay rise to any workers. So it's still a plus. It's
yeah.
definitely one thing that people can call an action. We often say like, yeah,
Right.
well, so much talk, like where's the action? I think this can definitely be considered one of the actions, and hopefully we see more things coming with the future as well.
Yeah.
Mwah.
So I
Yeah.
think we're about good to wrap it up.
Yes, we
We've
are,
got Matt
and
ready to say goodbye.
mhm, we will be back next week, same time, same day, Tuesday, and cover whatever else pops up between now and then. Thank you guys so much for
Yeah.
watching. And I want to give a quick shout out to Lincoln, 46-month resub. That's almost 4 years. And the same
Yeah.
with Aegis as well, 46-month resub. Very insanely long supportive for the channel. And then
Yep.
we also had a pop up of Fell Screens, who resubbed 3 months in a
So
row. So
thank
thank
you
you very much for that
much.
too. And yeah,
Yeah.
thank you guys for watching. And if you are watching this right now with us here on Twitch, these always get uploaded to YouTube as well. So if there's any part of the show that you want to rewatch, perhaps you can always find it on Wowhead's YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube, hi, hello. This was streamed live on Twitch initially, as this is meant to be a live show. You can always tune in with us if you want to watch it live, if you want to ask any questions in the chat. We do try to consider the questions that are put in the chat so that we always make sure to answer them. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next week.
See ya.
Oh, you were
Bye.
muted there for a second, but we heard see ya.
Oh, no. Bye.
Bye. Bye, Bright Paw. Bright Paw is also here. Bye, everyone.
Bye.